The purpose of the Global CFO Council is to provide an educational and networking forum for senior financial executives in order to share best practices, discuss current financial issues, and to learn about current topics related to the performance of their jobs. Membership is open to senior financial executives including CFOs, financial VPs, and treasurers. We hope that you'll become a member of the Global CFO Council today. To join, please visit the membership tab at globalcfocouncil.com.
Ron, I think you are living out of the Atlanta area, co-founder at Silicon Sky, specializes in IT infrastructure. And I think something interesting, Ron, I think you're a golfer and a pretty good golfer. Is that true?
Well, yes, thank you for the introduction. I am a good golfer. I don't know how good I am. I don't
Really
think
good.
I'll
Really good.
I don't think I'll let anybody know how good I am. If we played for money, we'll see what happens after 18. But your words have been very kind. I'll take them to heart. Thank you.
Well, that's how you know they're good, is when they say they're not good. Frank is not a good golfer at all. Frank
No.
is, though, the co-founder and CTO of Avar or Avar. I feel embarrassed. I didn't ask you how to pronounce it. You could
Avar,
probably
good.
charge more if it, which is it?
Avar.
Avar. Yeah, Avar sounds more expensive. I like that. That's classy. Out of the Charlotte area, full service IT consulting firm. And interestingly, about you, Frank, I found out, I think you got an undergrad or at least studied in religious studies at UNC Chapel Hill. And then because you wanted to hit every school in the state, you got a undergrad in chemistry at NC State.
Correct,
two
yeah.
different schools and two different degrees that have nothing to do with IT, but very interesting.
100%. And I really like a Duke loss might be my favorite thing. I like when one of those two teams wins, but I really like it when Duke loses. So yeah, made it almost all the way around the triangle.
Well, I really like hearing from awesome speakers like yourselves, and so I'm going to mute myself and then hit you with a few little questions at halftime and then at the end. Thank you very much.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for having us, Robert. Today we just want to cover how to reduce some of the risk that's creeping in to operational budgets when we're trying to hold them flat, but risk is kind of knocking on a lot of doors in our organizations. And so we want to try to talk about Avar's approach to reducing that risk, especially against our operational budgets. So Ron, if you don't mind, next slide, please. And I want to give you this. I don't know how long everybody's got until we all have to leave and check out what's happening with interest rates. So the short version of today is just that we want to talk about where risk is coming from, where the financial pressures are coming from an operational budget perspective, and what kinds of risks those are introducing. We want to talk about how people are trying to get around that and deal with that, and then we want to identify one of the gaps in those strategies and talk about how to fill those gaps. And then just talk about what's left is potentially the best of both worlds. So with maybe reducing one of the methods of dealing with that stuff. So we'll get into that more in depth today, but that's the basic bottom line right now, and then we'll get into the details of it next. Thanks, Ron. So I want to just level set on terminology. The terminology we've sort of chosen at hand for this is the run, grow, transform terminology that you guys probably are familiar with and use in your parlance every day. For the purposes of what we're talking about, we're kind of treating the grow bucket as somewhat parenthetical. Depending on how you hold it up to the light, grow might be sometimes seen as part of the transform and innovation budget. Sometimes it's an extension of the operational keeping the lights on budget. So for the intent of this, we're going to kind of squeeze grow almost out of the discussion and just look at our run budget versus our transformation budget. Next slide. And so this, the reason I put this slide up, and this is the same data in both. Some people are more table people, some people are more bar graph people. So I don't know if everyone's industries are represented here, but what we see is that on the whole, with the exception of the tech native kind of companies, the operational budget is the lion's share of our spending when it comes to IT. And so we'll see on the next slide in just a second that the tendency is for the innovation budget to get squeezed, and there already isn't a ton of innovation budget to work with proportionately. And so everything we can do to keep pressure off of that green, and off of that little sliver of innovation capital, the better we can do. So let's take a look at what's happening on that in the next slide. So this slide really is probably more about is more about the quantifiable forces that we're seeing against operational budgets. So inflation, unfortunately, we're going to get, or maybe fortunately, we're going to get some news about that, but it affects everybody. It's fairly global. No one's getting away from that one. Compliance is cutting across ever more industries and becoming more stringent. The tricky part about compliance is that it's kind of just an access to the market fee. You can tell your customers that their data is more secure, but I think they're probably assuming that in the first place, or they're hoping that. So it's tough to pass it on as a feature and charge more for it. But the risk is that if you don't do it, then you lose access to certain markets. There's a huge wave in the DoD right now of people having to become CMMC compliant. And it takes a long time, and it's expensive, and it's hard. And at the same time, you have to do it because if you don't, you're not selling anything to the government. So it's just putting a squeeze. That's putting a squeeze on the innovation budget as well. Vendor costs. I hope that not many people are familiar with this Broadcom story, but if you are, you're probably going to ask me to draw a taller arrow. Broadcom recently bought VMware, and VMware, for those of you who don't know, it is essentially the operating system of most of your data centers. It's the virtualization platform of choice for probably 90 or 95% of the market for everybody who's running their own data centers on-prem. And so Broadcom bought VMware maybe 2 years ago or so. I think it's about been 2 years. And we've heard regularly increases in annual licensing between 3 and 10x. A bank that I spoke to here in Charlotte had a 30x increase in their charges. So it's putting a huge squeeze on people. You might lump into vendor costs as well, cloud costs. That cloud cost is all over the place. That one really might be in the G bucket, but it's definitely, and it might be in the innovation bucket. It might be supporting a revenue generating application, but cloud waste in particular is a huge expense that's creeping up on people. And then security. Microsoft just came through an attack with 500,000 endpoints attacking it at the same time. That was AI driven. Fortunately, they've got deep pockets and tall walls and thick walls defending them and great defenses, and they weathered it. But that's just going to be a cost. Again, it's almost a cost of doing business because the attacks are getting more sophisticated and less discriminatory. They're just after everybody. So that one's affecting our pricing. That's affecting our operational budgets as well. So that gap, either we raise those budgets to meet all these demands, or we don't raise our budgets and say, well, let's defer them. And then we're exposed to all kinds of these, to any one of these things, inflation being the one that's really not optional. Next one, please, Ron. So those are the ones that you can kind of quantify. They might show up somewhere on the balance sheet, but the one that's sort of invisible but ubiquitous is technical debt. And technical debt can be upgrades of legacy hardware or software. It can be rewriting an application that ran on an old version of Windows, but doesn't run on a current version of Windows. It could be the trade-offs that we always have to make in operations and in deployment of development and production applications that maybe we sometimes favor speed over 100% completeness. And we say, we'll come back and get that. We're not using the authentication mechanism we want to use for this application. We'll go back and fix that. Those are not trivial. It's like saying, well, we use lead pipes in our new home, but we'll go back and put, the appropriate material in it later on. Sometimes you're taking walls out to do it, and so it's really hard. But the rule of thumb is that can eat away at up to 40% of an operational budget in the form of time and the money it takes to bring systems up to speed. The other risk that it introduces as well is that because those platforms are ubiquitous, they're supporting a lot of our production applications and the revenue generating applications. It can sometimes delay the launch of products. So the risk is always that we're second to market or third to market with a new product or a new offering. We want to be first. We want to hit it hard. And when technical debt kind of rears its ugly head, it can delay the launch of those things and delay the revenue that's supposed to come along with it. Next slide. So, one of the ways that people try to deal with this is to get better visibility with IT financial management. But it's notoriously complicated. We've got costs that are or revenue that's aligned to lines of business and products, applications that are driving value for customers. And then the costs tend to be more horizontally oriented and they cut across all of those lines of business. They cut across the back office that's supporting all your team who's not in development and rolling that stuff out, that's in billing and HR and finance and operations. All that kind of stuff is in the cost bucket. So mapping those two things is extremely hard. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of people. So internal staff tend to get tied up. We tend to have to pay management consultant groups, maybe the Bains and McKenzie's, et cetera. And they might make some recommendations sort of at a strategic level. Some initial recommendations might come out in maybe 6 to 12 months. We're not necessarily always used to getting a lot of practical, hands-on, this is the task, right away kind of feedback from those guys. So it can be 12 to 24 months before we're saying these are the initiatives that we recommend. And so that can just take quite a while. In the meantime, let's say you've got the industry average of 32% wasted spend in the cloud for your applications. The meter's just running and that money is just walking out the door. It's just lighted on fire, So that's the one side of it is let's be really strategic about it, really comprehensive, but it's going to take a little bit of time or a lot of time. The next slide, please, Ron. So that's a recap of that is on this left side, really. It's as we said, intractable, difficult to peel apart, difficult to assign, and it's sort of inert. It doesn't launch. It doesn't go into action really quickly. On the other side, though, because of all that technical debt and the things that we deferred and said, well, we'll get to that later, and we don't really have an organized way of looking at all that stuff, we end up firefighting a lot. And I came up through the operational side of things. I was an admin, an on-call guy, an architect, and I was in those things where we said, oh, that thing that we were supposed to fix or that thing we said we would fix, it's time. It's past time. We've got to do it now. And people are not just waiting around for work to do. They're already in the middle of something. So now we just yank them out of one context, put them into another. And then we're typically under the gun and the sort of organization of that project isn't at its finest. And so we end up with a lot of inefficiency in that. Maybe we're not finding the best solution to solve it. We're not taking the time to negotiate the best rate for it and find the best partner for it. And so, it feels like it's kind of like cutting the end off of a bottle rocket and launching it. It's going to have a lot of energy. It's going to get a lot of things going and get things done, but it's not predictable. It's not repeatable, and it's not. It's a little out of control. So those are the two ends that we tend to see. Really strategic, really slow. Not strategic, really inefficient. Okay, next slide. So what Avar proposes is the way we go about this is what we call a systematic tactical approach. So it's a slightly oxymoron, but it's meant to be a synthesis of the two. So what we want to do is look for targeted optimization. We want to say, okay, well, what are the things? Let's go through your environment. We use an assessment base for this. We want to go through the environment and say, well, what can we knock out in 1 to 2 quarters, or maybe less? Sometimes 30 to 60 days. A cloud spend is a really good example of that. We can do that in 30 to 60 days without having to get into engineering, talk to the cloud application teams, et cetera. We're looking at things essentially from a contractual basis, optimizing that. So it's a financial decision. It's a financial engagement. But what we want to do is make sure that those things are cash flow positive. So we get money back out of those operational buckets that we can put back in either to offset something like inflation. Maybe it's to shop around for something that's not as expensive as the VMware renewal is facing us. But again, taking pressure off of the innovation budget and hopefully retiring. I mean, my favorite thing in the entire world, especially as an practitioner, is to take pressure off the technical debt that's looming over your staff, who's like admins and operators. Okay, next one, please, Ron. So the way we go about this is we use a really, really quick qualitative diagnostic, an executive assessment. And our audience for this, like we assume that our audience for this is the group of people in your organization who are in leadership meetings. We heard that we did disaster recovery testing last year and it was unsuccessful. Or we've been in the cloud and our budget's continually overrun. Or we're trying to do remote access for mobile users, and it's really expensive. It takes a long time to onboard or decommission users, and we're stuck in that place. Or we're trying to do an audit. We're trying to look at our PCI DSS posture, and it's a mess of 50 spreadsheets, and we don't, it costs us a lot of money and time. We get wrapped around the axle with it. We're not going to go into what version of software are your Cisco switches running? That's not what we're going after. What we want to do is just to help you identify those areas that are potentially at more risk, especially from a cost standpoint, from an operational standpoint. And then, conversely, you can see there's some of the stuff will come up as green. So we find, and with our customers as well, we find that a lot of times it's just as important to help deprioritize. Sometimes it is fair to defer something and to put it down lower on the list. And so that's one of the additional sort of like follow-on values of this assessment-based methodology. But we want to get in, have a conversation with you over a cup of coffee. And then if we find an area that's a little bit, that might need some help, that's a little bit higher risk, we'll go in and then we'll explore that conversation a little bit more with your technical staff, and we'll gather the information that says this is an appropriate solution. And if there's not, if it's not an appropriate solution, we'll take it off the table. So what we want to do is just make sure this is a good conversation starter and a good way to organize the approach to knocking down some of those other areas that we talked about previously. Next slide, Ron. So what we want to do, back to the sort of arrows that we looked at earlier that are pushing from the operational budget up into the innovation budget. And the vendor costs, yeah, like I mentioned, cloud waste a couple of times. VMware, definitely like the villain lately. They're just a four-letter word. So we work with solutions that replace them, both on-prem and off-prem, like in the cloud as well. So like Silicon Sky, for example. Then with compliance, we help make sure that that's organized and work is assigned more smoothly, and the tools that are required to prove compliance are there as well. And then with technical debt, there's a number of different solutions out there right now that just take work out of the system. They consolidate storage, for example, or consolidate even data centers and make them appear as if they're all local to each other. So there's a number of different things that we would talk about as secondary level discussions after an initial assessment, but those are the ones we really try to go after, is those main ones. And of course, inflation. I mean, if we were expert at inflation or anti-gravity or flying cars or whatever it would be that no one's ever solved for perfectly, we wouldn't be IT solutions people. But that one's unfortunately one that's just going to affect us globally, affect all of us. So I wanted to give you guys a couple of examples, and then we'll talk about one that we worked on with Silicon Sky that was another short-term, really successful engagement. But Ron, if you'll show the next slide, I'll go through these first two. One of these was a university out in Virginia. They were a Citrix shop. So one thing that we hear commonly is their VMware was for servers and the data center, but VMware also had a desktop component virtualization for desktop. So there was Horizon, and then it was Omnissa, but now the costs of that are ballooning because it's all things VMware. And so people are like, well, that's great, I'll go to Citrix. But Citrix is not necessarily known for being economical either, or they were already on Citrix because they didn't choose VMware in the first place. So this university was looking for a replacement for Citrix, knowing they couldn't go to VMware because it would be more expensive still. And so we were able to help them within 1 quarter do a POC and deploy all their VDI, redeploy their VDI on a different solution and saved them 60% against their Citrix budget. On the FinOps side, one of our solutions was applied to a social fintech company, sort of like a social platform for trading, essentially. That was a 60-day engagement. And really, I mean, there's a huge number here. 4 million in annual savings is fantastic. And again, it wasn't a technical engagement. It wasn't like we said, rewrite a bunch of applications, go call the engineers and make them change things. This was two pieces, really. One was visibility. Whose name is on the spending? Whose name is on the biggest chunk of the bill? And then, so that had a lot of that drove a lot of good conversations and some behavioral changes. And then the other piece of it was that there's an automated savings plan optimization that happens all the time, continuously. So there's essentially a contractual renegotiation happening on a perpetual basis, which kept prices low. So again, that one was even faster than the VDI one. That was a 60-day. That one, the assessment of that's really quick. The implementation of it is not long either. So, Ron, if you'll go to the next one, I'll get into the one we worked on together. In this case, we had an existing customer who had just shut down their secondary data center. So they lost their ability to have a second site during a disaster scenario. And disaster recovery planning, as you know, you can't really depend on just a single site. It could be, a lot of things can happen. And it's kind of crazy how many times a utility company is digging outside of a data center and they cut the bundle of fiber optic that goes in for all the carriers. It's kind of wild how often that happens. But anyway, a number of things can happen to your primary site. And these guys were saving money by closing their secondary site. They had been in about a 90-day proof of concept with a public cloud provider to be their second site and do disaster recovery. They were 10 VMs in. They were protecting almost 40 of their critical crown jewel virtual machines, and they had only gotten 10 in there. They're also realizing that if they ever turned on testing, they were going to double their annual bill because the run state, when things are actually powered on and running and being tested, is as expensive as an entire year of running just to push the stuff into the cloud. So we had a conversation with them, introduced them to Ron and Silicon Sky, had one conversation. The next conversation, we connected their on-premises environment to Silicon Sky's cloud environment and started selecting the virtual machines we wanted to protect. In the third conversation, we had a more involved discussion with their networking team to make sure that there was matching connectivity up in the cloud and on-prem so that if they ever turn it on, things would be able to talk to each other. So in all that, we had about 3 meetings over 3 weeks. All of them were protected, and the real, not only was the bill lower, but the piece of it for them that was really most appealing was the fact that the bill was locked. There isn't a usage-based component to it, so they get 2 free weeks of testing in the Silicon Sky cloud per month if they want it. So they can go over and over and over again over their testing plan if they so desire, and it was a huge value to them to be able to just continue testing, not incur a usage-based bill, and then also be done with it. I mean, no one wants to spend all their time and their best people's time on something that we look at as sort of belt and suspenders, but you have to do it, and you might as well do it really, really quickly and efficiently. We found that the Silicon Sky solution was really effective for it. So that's what I kind of wanted to give you guys from a AVAR's approach to this. To lowering risk and watching those operational costs. I'll turn it over to Ron in a minute, but per Robert's note a second ago, we've got time for any Q&A or anything that came in along the way.
Yeah, I'll start off with one of mine is, and open to anybody, Ron or Frank, is I'm glad you've been talking about the IT spend. I definitely am not imagining that early in my career, I think IT spend was like 1%, then 2%, then 3% of revenue. I'm in professional services right now, and I see forecasts of 3 to 6%. Like, it is astonishing how much more expensive the number of tools and the cost of every tool, every partner, every consultant, I think, is twice as expensive as they used to be. And I feel like companies are changing their licensing rules. Used to be able to share licenses. Now it used to be unnamed. Now it's named. Could you talk a little bit about the scale? Because it's 1, 2, 3x could be, and it'll be more X in the next few years.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, I think I didn't put it in there, but the numbers I've seen are probably between 4 and 7% of revenue goes to IT, generally speaking. So that's a lot. The term that I've seen around what you're talking about is something that people sort of informally refer to as shrinkflation. I mean, it's a playbook out of like every streaming provider. Let's pay $7.99 and then let's pay 20 to have the exact same thing we had before. Now 7 isn't anything. 12 is the starter and it has commercials. Like there's an analog for this in the enterprise world, but the features are slipping away from us that we thought we had initially. So now we have to pay for, everything's tiered. We have to pay a little bit more to get what we had initially, or stay at the same cost and lose functionality. Or there's always like partnerships. You got to have this piece to work with that piece, and there's all these integrations and things like that that always go with it too. So you might not get 100% of your functionality out of an ERP system unless you buy some other piece that fills in some gaps. I mean, it's all kinds of stuff like that going on. I don't know what those statistics look like for tech companies. There's an interesting stat, though, around tech companies because they tend to be cloud native. They tend to be born in the cloud. Andreessen Horowitz did an article maybe 5 years ago in which they said if you save $1 in the cloud, you add $25 to your market valuation. But that number's since been revised down to maybe 10x or something, so 1 to 10. But it pays. It pays to reduce that because that's in your COGS number. That's like a cost of goods sold if that's your cloud and it's the infrastructure for your revenue generating applications. The more we can lower that and widen those margins, the better. It's really most pronounced in a tech company, but I'm sure that there's some analog or variant of that across other industries as well. And the other thing I will say too is, I'm in Charlotte, so like banking is everywhere down here. There's 5 banks on every corner. One of the things about that is that I think they're pretty high on the operational to innovation budget. And a lot of what they're doing to innovate is really around compliance. So compliance kind of gets tucked up into the innovation. So innovation is effectively even smaller than maybe 10%. So anybody who's got really high regulatory compliance requirements like energy or utilities and banking are really, really getting squeezed by all the compliance stuff.
For Ron or Frank, and the next question from the box, you've brought up innovation and innovation spend and how for us to think about what percent of IT should be innovation versus maintenance. I think you just said 10%. Is there any kind of rule of thumb to know if you're behind the curve or ahead of the curve?
Well, I thought about that as I've looked at all those numbers. It would be great. Like I think the rule of thumb is if you're a leader, maybe you're closer to 50-50 or something like that. You'll see kind of create a pronounced difference between like a tech first startup or IT only company or technology software only company or something, for example. But because of the constraints across from industry to industry, I think it would be really hard to give a hard and fast rule and say you're best off if you're 70-30 or 60-40. The main thing is to just keep it down. I mean, drive it down and keep it down. So when we look at every dollar we can get out of that operational budget as a potential investment in innovation, or at least the innovation budget isn't being robbed by operational costs. So it's just try to grow it for wherever you are. I mean, it'd be really tricky to say that it's going to be a fixed number for everybody.
But it can run away from you very quickly, Frank. Just to add to that point, there's a large financial institution we do a lot of business with, and they did a strategic public cloud partnership with a public cloud provider about 6 years ago. The CFO needed to, after 4 years, make a very strategic announcement to the market as they're a publicly traded company that they are close to finishing off the project. It was so over budget, it was nearly 600, $700 million over budget that it was starting to impact the market cap of the particular bank. So, it's something you really got to keep your finger on. Having said that, the innovation that they were doing was really changing the game and moving the needle, particularly at the ease of which their customers can deal with them, right? So legacy banks, old mainframe systems, you need to modernize. The younger generations, they want to pick up their phone and they want to buy services from you from an app, right? So you can't stop innovating, else you're going to fall behind. But you can't be fodder to the low-hanging fruits out there because it will cost you a lot of money.
Last question, and then I'll yield the floor back. I'm going to consolidate a couple of questions around. You brought up the consolidation of cloud providers, these infrastructure providers, the consolidation. There were some questions around risk to operations when that happens and continuity of operations. And then some other questions around, is there any swing back from cloud to on-prem or hybrid? What are we, as these cloud-based services continue to rise dramatically? It's almost it used to be cheaper, and now I don't think it's cheaper anymore. So interested in a couple different angles on the consolidation of providers. What are you seeing on risk to operations? What are you seeing on pricing and trends in on-prem versus hybrid versus cloud? I'm interested, both Frank and Ron, whatever you got.
Yeah, I would say the multiple cloud thing is a philosophical. I mean, it's a philosophical question. I think you'll see as many people saying, like we have one customer who's really, they were started and grew in AWS. They have analogous infrastructure at Azure because of their customer base, and somebody said, we don't put us in AWS. And so, but they weren't setting out to say we need to be in both because we're hedging our bets or anything like that. We see companies who are in maybe all three public clouds, but that might just be because of acquisition. Like that. Sometimes it just came that way as they bought other companies or acquired other companies. But we do see consolidation in some sense. But the first company I mentioned that's in AWS recognize there's something of an existential threat to them staying in public cloud, like the big three, let's say. They're seeing an intersection between their cost of goods sold and revenue. And so it's down the road, but the cost of goods sold is going up more steeply than their revenue. And they're seeing an intersection there the dashboard lights are on for them. So they're pulling a significant chunk of their workloads back on-prem because not everything needs instantaneous resource allocation and all the agility that people think they're needing in the cloud, especially for development, for non-prem, for disaster recovery environments. There's a whole set of use cases that fit quite well on-prem. And then, I mean, I came up through this world, and when we work with Silicon Sky, there is this middle layer of the national cloud providers like Silicon Sky that are they're a much better financial model than on-prem, operational model than on-prem, and they're a heck of a lot better cost model than public cloud. So they're more efficient, they're more predictable. The service is a heck of a lot better, and so that's where we really tend to focus is we see people retiring old hardware, thinking about the cloud. But I've yet to hear of a company who said, we're going to go to the cloud. We know it's going to be 1-to-1 with what we used to spend on-prem, and we nailed it. Like, it just never happened. I hear 2x, 4x, 6x. I mean, it's always some crazy multiple, and you're like, well, why did you, like, I don't even understand, like, and people go into it knowing it'll be 2 and they still hit 4. Like it's the craziest thing. So like what we like is when we say, here is your quote from Silicon Sky. This is how much it's going to be. That's it. Like they know the number when they're going in and then they move in and that's the number on their first invoice. It's a beautiful thing to see happen. So that's I like that. I mean, part of my background, I used to work at NC State. I've worked for some not-for-profit companies, and the thing I I really hate is just wasted spend. I hate just like money going to nothing because it's people's bonuses and salaries and like you're effectively wasting people's time when you're wasting the money. So I like really, really tight, efficient spending. I like to see all that money going to work and providing a return. And so that's where we, though we do see these like on-prem and public cloud things, that real sweet spot for us is actually in the national level, the Silicon Skies of the world. Ron, I took a lot of your time, man. My apologies.
No, that's fine, dude.
You
That's
triggered a
fine.
rant, Robert. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, you're good. My side of the presentation is all AI, so we're all out of jobs soon. So it goes really quickly. But, Robert, just to add to what Frank said there, the numbers, numbers just don't lie, right? If you want an accurate figure of something, you look at the brass tacks. And I can tell you, look at our business over the last 3 years, 40% of our new logos that joined us quarter by quarter are coming out of the public cloud. Once they're educated enough and realize they don't really need to live on-prem, there are other alternatives out there. But I'll go into that in a second.
Yeah. So what we did with Silicon Sky for this customer case was around disaster recovery, but they're much more full service than that across infrastructure as a service and other stuff. So I wanted to make sure that we explored sort of like what it looks like beyond initial assessment, and having identified something that might be of interest or at risk or somewhere where costs are not lining up properly, a little bit more about Silicon Sky's full capabilities and how they're really set up well, especially for a financial conversation. So, Ron, I think I'll turn it over to you at this point, if that's okay. Robert, any other questions? Cool.
Okay. Thanks, Frank. So just real quick, some background information on Silicon Sky, and I'll just show you a very, very entry-level version of the AI that we actually use to achieve these goals. And particularly the conversation that I'm going to expose you to today is really for the C-suite. CFOs really enjoy having this conversation. And I've coined a Frank Shepherd phrase in one of my slides, but about 12 to 16 months ago, we went on a big mission to change the data center discussion forever. And really what it is, everybody who's done a data center deal, bought storage servers or gone into the cloud, we liken it to if anybody's bought a motor vehicle on the group today, the most important question you can ask is what is the out the door number, right? And what's been causing a lot of confusion over the last few years is what is my actual out the door number? So you give me an estimate, I think it's in budget, I move workloads to the cloud, and from month one, the unseen fees and charges just, escalate my bill. My bill's never going to be the same. So that was, the real mission. For the last 19 years, we've been heavily involved on a global scale. We got lots of infrastructure and scale at a global layer around compute, network, storage, backup, security, disaster recovery. Needless to say, we've been competing against the public cloud for the same amount of period. And as mentioned earlier, there's a lot of movement in the marketplace right now, trying to secure non-public cloud type arrangements where organizations are getting the same results. Again, founded in 2009, the data center is our business, enterprise global scale, matched with what we like to believe is superior service. And it really is a new approach to technology investments. We embraced AI. We had a look at it again, we just wanted to be the first organization to show CFOs, CROs, RT people, C-suite people, the actual wiring behind the board with the technology investments. And, to coin a phrase from Frank, he put this idea on the table and I absolutely loved it. And it's, I think it'll resonate with a lot of CFOs that have done a lot of RT projects in their day. Your RT team will go do the due diligence, speak to 4, 5, 6 different vendors, get 6 different solutions. Everybody will say their solution's best for some reasons. You build the pros and cons, you build a budget around it, and off you go and you do that project. And, in IT, I don't think I need to tell anybody on this call, but, storage costs keep going up. You think you're buying storage for 3 years and you end up having to spend more mid-cycle, or, how many IT projects have we seen that goes over budget, over scope, and over time, right? So what we really wanted to do is take evidence first and solution later, right? So give the financials, super accurate way to a CFO. So during the process of actually choosing a solution and let your IT guys do the due diligence, you got a very accurate picture of what each financial requirements is going to be from solution to solution, especially in the cloud, right? And it's a unique opportunity for CSOs, like I said, to get an exact costing model in seconds that has proven over the last 16 months to be super accurate. So not once has an organization come back to us and said, you were way out. In fact, we don't commercialize this particular bit of consultancy engagement that we'll show you with AR. It's there as a value add to our organizations, but what it really does is it takes out a lot of the fun and gives you a very accurate picture. But at the same time, what it does is it saves you months and months of consultancy, very expensive consultancy, to go do evidence gathering, due diligence, and discovery, right? So yes, AI is changing our world, and we're using it in a way where it really complements our partners like Avar. Avar's really got some good nuts and bolts there that we think we can accelerate their discussion with you guys, and have some conversations that show you true results extremely quickly in the cycle. Lots of customers globally. I'm not going to bore everybody there, and we certified. We certified on a global standard in terms of data protection management, infrastructure, backup, and DRAs. We've got the PCI compliance, the SOC 2 stuff, everything that should put everybody at ease in terms of doing business with a global platform that is at scale, that can have a conversation on Azure versus AWS versus Silicon Sky. Frank, do you just want to talk to that while I change screens real quick?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So this will be in what's distributed to you guys from Robert, and it's here too. But I just want to offer my time, or if you guys want to continue the conversation, if anyone wants to talk more through this, or go to the assessment just directly and take it. It's not meant to be, like I said, intimidating or anything like that. Want to sit down over a coffee with somebody and do it, or give us a call. We'll go through it with you as well. So just use those links if you want to. Thanks, Ron.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So basically what we've done, and I'm not going to go into too much technical detail, it really is designed to show the C-suite, if we had to do some models, what would it look like, whether you've been on-prem, whether you've been in public cloud, or what public cloud would that be, Google, Azure, AWS. And because it is our tool and it is our IP, what we've done is we've made sure that Silicon Sky is a flavor in this tool, and we're comparing what's out there and available to Silicon Sky at all times. And DevOps is a very important thing. Robert, you did touch on that, the innovation piece. Any CFO or CIO or IT guy will know that when you're doing application modernization, you're writing the code in, you're writing it in Kubernetes clusters, container clusters. It's the most efficient way to develop code. And really that's, between AWS, Azure, and Google, that is really where a lot of developers like to live. We have got, the same offering, but the beautiful thing about modernization and containers is I can take a container and immediately run it in multiple clouds. So your traditional applications, your traditional workloads, which I'm going to show you as part of this this particular part of the tool, the modernization piece really does set you free. And you should be looking at organizations that don't charge egress, they don't penalize you for leaving. It's month-to-month contracts, come in, come out whenever you want. But if we had to do an engagement with your IT teams within 25 minutes, we'll have a very good idea on what your workloads are going to be looking like in the public cloud, Silicon Sky, or on-prem. And just to give you an example on how quickly we can actually make this happen, I'm just going to import. So there's lots of ways we can import information into the tool in terms of this is your environment. This information should be available at all times in your world. Your IT department will be able to furnish this information very simply. And I just don't know why it doesn't want to take this file right now. There it goes. So what we do is we'll look at how many CPUs you got, how much memory you got, how much storage you got. We'll take that information, we summarize it in the RT tool, and then we start having a very quick discussion. Do you want infrastructure as a service? Yes, I do. Immediately, we will start telling you what the AWS, Azure, Google, and Silicon Sky cost is. For the benefit of your IT team, we go into incredible detail so I can see a particular workload. What is it going to cost me to run in Silicon Sky, AWS, Azure, and Google? And to show you that we're not, we partial. Some people might say we're biased. We really not. We actually give your IT teams exactly how we do the calculations. We talk to Azure, AWS, and Google's APIs, and we refresh every second. So everything here is incredible detail. And you'll see, there are some workloads over here that you're going to be overpaying. So if you put that workload in Google, you're going to be spending 25% more than what you should have because there's wasted resources. And again, we get into some incredible detail, right? So per VM, what instance you're going to run in the public cloud. And we also start giving you the waste. So on this particular VM, this is the waste you're going to incur. That is money that you're going to spend, you're never going to use, and you're never going to get back. And then basically what we're also showing you here is the difference between Silicon Skies. Everything's included from day one. Unlimited internet traffic, your cross connects into the cloud, your firewalling, your 24/7 management. There's no microtransactions. So even when we say we're going to be driving a lot of cost savings versus Azure, AWS, and Google, there's actually going to be some additional charges that you're going to incur over and above that, right? Some customers might say to us, we just want to start with DRAS. We don't particularly need to, do infrastructure as a service straight away because we do have some equipment that's got a lot of life cycle. Immediately, we can tell you on these workloads, what is your Silicon Sky build, your AWS build, your Azure build, your Google build. And again, we go into incredible detail. So, this is months and months of consultancy work, doing assessments and all of those things. Frank has got some amazing modeling that he can, present it back in an executive format. But a lot of what we can help Frank with at Silicon Sky is, incredible detail, and we give you the peace of mind that the work has been done. We can even isolate it to backup as a service, and again, we can go compare this to the public cloud. I've got it set up for Veeam Data Cloud in Azure, or bring your own license to Azure right now. Lots of detail in terms of little fine notes, what you need to look out for. Again, it's super fast, super accurate. If you want to stay on-prem, we're welcome to have that conversation as well. And we absolutely build out, I apologize, there's no doubt the cloud has got some benefits from resiliency in terms of, lots of redundancy, lots of equipment that you can lean on, as in when you got projects scale up, scale down. But we will build out an on-prem environment for you that includes server, storage, network equipment, firewalls, hosting, backup infrastructure, software licensing, Microsoft licensing, VMware licensing, backup infrastructure, the hosting costs, the monitoring, the security, the compliance. And we actually summarize it completely and let you run a TCI environment for that environment on which cloud wins versus building it on-prem again, right? So in this particular example, our commercial models are different to the public cloud. So a lot of our move to cloud or stay on-prem, a lot of those business case works in our environments. But again, we give you extremely accurate information that you can build an environment and go double check it with Azure, AWS, or allow Frank to go double check that in the market for you. So, we are definitely speeding up the process with a lot of accuracy, but we are giving you the wiring behind the board. We are allowing you to see how different vendors offering the same service or similar services are actually doing their costings. And, with AI, you really can't hide these days. You can interrogate any API that is out there. On the DevOps side as well, what we're doing today is a lot of customers are saying, I'm modernizing my application. What does it mean for me to go run machine code? What is it for me to go run containers? I can switch off my legacy servers I have in my data center. What we've done is we built Kubernetes as a service, containers as a service, if you like, and we even go down to running containers and comparing the public cloud again versus Silicon Sky. But you will be able to see a lot of the cheat sheets. You get into a lot of the detail on where the microtransactions come from. And we actually give your team, be careful of this. This is going to cost you a lot of money. This is where you're going to need it. This is where you're not going to need it. So I did fly through that because I am worried about time a little bit, Robert. So there's 6 minutes left, but I'm hoping that gives the panel, the guests today, an absolute feel on how we're using AI and how we're giving customers an accurate cost prediction in terms of running their workloads in the public cloud or versus on-prem, as we've built that functionality in as well. And it's not a tool that you need to go buy from a marketplace. We've developed it. We've invested a lot of money into it for our partners like AMR, and it really is there. It's part of the sales toolkit. It's part of the value add. We're not going to charge license fees for it. We haven't. We've saved many organizations a lot of money, but at least at the same time, we're giving the CFO layer some very accurate at the beginning of the consultancy exercise. Within seconds, we're starting the costing models for you, so you can start adjusting your mindset on what your budget is, what it should be, and what it should cost you long term. And I think with that, I'll hand it back over.
I'm going to hit you guys rapid fire with a couple questions. One is, any special considerations for small or mid-market CFOs? We have a lot of members that are kind of in that $50 to $500 million in revenue. Any special things to consider or advice for the mid-market?
So the mid-market is definitely our sweet spot. It's where we have most of our conversations. And my biggest bit of advice is for the SME and the mid-market, that is really where the public cloud is putting a lot of effort and marketing dollars into to try to convert more of the mid-market. It's kind of a higher margin profile business from them, for them. I think for that mid-market, definitely do your homework. It's 100% why this tool actually exists today, or this consultancy methodology exists today. The smaller you are, if you're a Bank of America, you're spending a lot of money, in Azure and AWS, and that's just where they're going to stay. The mid-market owes, the CFO mid-market needs to understand that there's parity in functionality and companies doing this at a global scale, that you don't need to feel nervous. Well, I've got to go to Azure. I've got to go to AWS. They're massive. Nobody ever got fired, giving IBM an order. There are alternatives out there, and, do your homework.
The other thing I would say too, operationally, is that Silicon Sky is not a gigantic cognitive shift for people who have a certain skill set working with tools that have been on-prem. It's a different operational vocabulary in public cloud, where it's not such a massive jump to light speed operationally for somebody moving into a Silicon Sky. And they're also incredibly helpful in planning and execution with providing guidance around that. So you think about a team of generalists. The mid-market is full of teams that are in this they've been stuck in the doing more with less mode for a long time. You give somebody an on-prem environment, a public cloud environment, and a migration project, and now they've got 3 jobs, and they're barely doing the one well. So the moving into a Silicon Sky is not going to highlight the skills gap that exists in a lot of companies who've been on-prem for a long time. It's just a natural extension of infrastructure and operations, but it's not incredibly jarring and burdensome from a practitioner, from an IT team perspective.
That's a really good point.
For time is I'm going to combine some questions around AI ops, AI-driven operations, AI ML impact on IT infrastructure. Any thoughts there, notes there about what you're seeing or trends in the future regarding AI ops and infrastructure?
Rapid deployment. So, sorry, Frank, I don't know if you wanted to add to that, but from our perspective, it's rapid deployment, right? So I'll give you an example. A mid-market organization with 1,000 VMs, they move that to the public cloud. They're going to get support via documentation, so they're not going to really speak to people. Where it helps a company like Silicon Skies to scale. So where it'll take 12 to 16 months to try achieve a public cloud project to completion, Silicon Skies are able to do that now in about a week. So, and we've got some live references that any folks on the call today we'll be happy to introduce, and they can have independent conversations. But when we start driving our projects of a mid-market account of 1,000 workloads, delivering that project from start to finish with a complete handover in 1 week, where your current IT people operationally are, managing the self-service portal as good as they're managing their iPhone today, that's a major leap. And that is in practice today. That is not coming down the pipe. That is with us today.
That was awesome, guys. That was a lot in 1 hour. I feel fully educated in this lunch. I'm full of new knowledge, and what an awesome intel. I love a couple of things, folks. I'm going to close with one. There's a free analysis tool. I'm going to send a link with this information. And what a great time. This is the perfect timing to be having this conversation with your director, your CTO. This is the time to connect to then execute next year. We've all got savings goals, implementation, innovation, IT goals. This is the time to be having these conversations. I love the data-driven decisions, the what ifs, the scenario planning that can be done. Instead of having to call 10 vendors, you can call one and get information on the multiple vendors. I'm going to send out contact information for Ron and for Frank. I'm going to send out a copy of this presentation. I'm going to send a link of the video so you can share with the IT folks. Some of them are visual learners, so watching the video might help a conversation. And then I'll send a copy of this link, this assessment link that Frank has very kindly put together that can be a great tool to kick off and start this conversation. Guys, great job. This was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, Robert.
I hope you both have a wonderful day. Frank's going back to work. Ron's going to go play golf. And I hope everybody has an absolutely wonderful day. Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.